All right, folks. Sorry, looks like there were some technical difficulties. Thanks for joining me in this pop-up session due to some pretty significant weather in the San Francisco Bay Area. Uh, just a programming note, it's possible there will be connectivity interruptions. For those of you following the Xfinity saga, I just got off the line with the regional director for Xfinity, and they have had a whole phalanx of utility vehicles out today. The diagnosis is that there was severe squirrel-related damage. Squirrel, as in the small animal, where they had chewed all the way through the insulation on multiple lines in the neighborhood, exposing the copper wires inside, and meaning that they were highly corroded and potentially having some current flow somewhere where it wasn't supposed to. So frankly, I don't know exactly why that wasn't addressed before it got to that point, but anyway, they have now replaced the entire overhead line system in the neighborhood, supposedly. But there may still be outages. They did inform me that there could be connectivity issues for up to another hour today. So if I suddenly disappear, that is probably why. I'll try and come back on if that happens, but it may just not be possible. So just wanted to let folks know what happens. Hopefully, though, after today, that will be much improved. So anyway, cut to the chase, since this is a pop-up session. I said I wasn't going to do one today, but unless something interesting happened, and of course, famous last words. But what I'd like to do is just jump right over to the radar, because there's been a very slow-moving line of quite intense convective downpours in the Bay Area that is now causing some significant urban and small stream flooding. In fact, there's currently a flash flood warning in effect for the city of San Francisco, where there has been very heavy rainfall over the past couple hours. So I'm just going to share the radar now because it is interesting to see. So again, as usual, here is the San Francisco Bay Area radar, and there is an awful lot of orange and red on the radar. And in this case, these are not false echoes or necessarily bright banding. There might be a little bit of that on the fringes, but in the core, it really is coming down out there. And the rain, believe it or not, this is actually less intense rainfall than was falling in San Francisco an hour ago, but it's still coming down quite hard. And you can see that flash flood warning in effect by the Weather Service in Monterey. That does include the entire downtown area and all of San Francisco, city of San Francisco proper. And so the heavy rain continues there right now, and it may continue for another hour or so. It's not moving very quickly, even though the intensity has slightly slackened for now. It could pick back up again as this band right along the coast moves a little steadily eastward. Now, the heavy rain is actually pushing across San Francisco Bay and toward Richmond and Oakland. So it's slowly moving to the north-northeast. So if I zoom out, look at the motion of this blob. This big old convective blob, it's mostly moving to the north. And it's not moving very quickly. So its elements within the line are moving to the north, and very gradually, this whole object is very slowly moving to the east. But as you can see, it's taking its sweet time, and it has dropped a lot of water in different places. The North Bay saw some heavy thunderstorm activity with small stream flooding overnight. But today, there's reports of significant flooding in the city of San Francisco right now, and that's likely going to continue for a while in that flash flood warning area. Wouldn't be too surprised if there might be another flash flood warning somewhere down here, depending on how much longer it lasts and what the reports are. The rain intensities are just a little bit lower up north right now. Flash flooding less likely up there, though urban and small stream flooding certainly possible. And then further north into the North Bay, where it's been really wet, rain intensities are again lower, but there's still a big blob of slow-moving heavy rain up there, so there is a potential for some stream flooding there too. Also of note are some thunderstorms that are now developing in the San Joaquin Valley. This is actually more activity than they got yesterday. Instability is still quite high, although wind shear is lower, so the likelihood of, say, a tornado is lower. Even though they didn't materialize yesterday, today the likelihood of tornadic thunderstorms is lower, but it actually seems that the likelihood of overall thunderstorms, and maybe even an isolated severe one, maybe even a bit higher. than it was ultimately yesterday because of some things that didn't materialize. If I bring up the rotational velocity, earlier there were some pretty clear rotational signatures and waterspout potential. That has mostly gone away at this point. You can see some broad scale rotation in this region, but that's not going to produce a spin up at this point. It's too diffuse. But it is, I think, responsible. There is probably a little mesoscale, even a microscale feature somewhere in here, a little bit of a swirl that's sort of propagating this way that's responsible for triggering some of the most intense rainfall in this band. And there has been lightning at times. So these have been thunderstorms, although the amount of lightning has decreased recently. There was quite a lot more when it was just aligned along the coast. But on the other hand, there is now lightning being reported in some of these cells over the San Joaquin Valley, and I would expect additional thunderstorms to pop up later. It's a little bit farther from view, but it looks like Big Sur coast is going to get hit pretty hard by this too in the next hour or so as it slowly moves in. Could be some more mudslides and landslides there. Things are already saturated. Some intense heavy rainfall. The Santa Cruz Mountains has somewhat missed out on this so far, but now they're getting in on the action. Some more intense downpours there sort of developing in place. So they weren't there and now they are. I guess that's right along the coast. So there hasn't even moved into the mountains yet. It's imminently, once you get up in this vicinity, they're about to go. And then the other, this is sort of where the Mount Umunum radar site is, as I've mentioned before. I'm going to bring back up just a single panel so it's less distracting. Lots of heavy rain. If we look at Sacramento, I think we can see that there are some other storms popping up. Again, nothing severe, but, could be an isolated one. You never know what could pop up in a moist, stable, and pretty humid environment. It's actually kind of muggy out there. You can see thunderstorms once again up by Oroville on the east side of the valley here. But these may fill in later this afternoon, the rest of the valley, and also farther north. So that could be a pretty active afternoon. We're already seeing these thunderstorms in the San Joaquin Valley. They're just getting going on the west side right now, so west of Modesto, west of Stockton. If we go down to that radar site and closer to Fresno, we see that there are actually some stronger storms already. Once again, headed for Fresno and Hanford. These is at least a slight chance you can get a severe thunderstorm out of this. So turns out that in some ways today is a little more active than yesterday. Go figure. Not as much shear though, so the severe likelihood is lower and the tornado likelihood is definitely lower. Not impossible though. If we go to Southern California, because it got more active down there, a nice band of steady, light to moderate rain, some embedded heavy convective elements up in the mountains above LA, but right now nothing too crazy in the city of course. Any rainy afternoon is subject to cause problems with the LA commute. And then if we go farther east, and south, I suppose, all the way to San Diego, we see the rain still hasn't reached San Diego yet, but it will. It's still sort of hung up between about LA and Orange County up here. So this is still the subtropical moisture plume associated with the atmospheric river. Kind of like the last storm in early February, it's just continuing to stream across. It's not as dramatic as the early February storm. The rain is not as heavy down here, but the soils are more saturated. So there could yet still be some flood risk down in this region over the next 24 hours as this continues. Even though it's not super high, there is some moderate flood risk, especially if we can get a few thunderstorms with higher hourly rain rates develop, like we're seeing up in Northern California right now. That would raise the likelihood of flash flooding and debris flow. So to bring it back to the Bay Area, again, San Francisco, downtown, getting a bit of a break, relatively speaking, although it's still raining pretty heavily, but there could be another wave coming in as this little band moves back across downtown. So I'm guessing that's why the flash flood warning is still in effect for another full hour and a half. There's also, this is back building a little bit. You can kind of see that this is not making much eastward progress. It's just kind of sitting there with all this heavy rain. A lot of it is falling right now directly over San Francisco Bay, which is roughly there. But again, Highway 101 corridor, 280 corridor getting soaked, and all the East Bay freeways are just starting to as well. Notably, some of the places in the East Bay that have been drier during this and recent events, sort of this, the Concord, San Ramon, Dublin, Livermore kind of donut hole as of late is starting to fill in, get some rain, and honestly, I think that all of this is eventually going to move eastwards, so this is going to be a pretty heavy soaking in the East Bay donut hole up in that region in just an hour or so. So let's see what the comments are. By the way, it looks like San Francisco, the city of, during the most intense hour, saw about an inch of rain in an hour, which is a very high rain rate, again, for this part of the world. Not in the mountains, but in the city proper. That's going to cause urban flooding, overwhelmed storm drains. And this is like the fourth or fifth time now that that's happened in San Francisco over the past 2 years. There have been a lot of individual days and hours with very heavy convective downpours in the city of San Francisco itself. Some of that is up to random chance, of course. San Francisco is just one spot on the map, but it is remarkable that there has been so much intense hourly and daily precipitation in different parts of coastal California over the past couple of years. Once again, I'm begging scientists to reassess recent changes in those hourly rainfall rates in California. I think there's something there. Call me. Anyway, let's see what else is going on the radar map. Yeah, you can still see that sort of that swirl right over Half Moon Bay right now. It's it's a little bit indistinct, but it's vaguely moving northward through the line. Not a lot of lightning strikes ongoing right now with this line, but there is this line that's developing on the west side of the San Joaquin Valley. We go back up to Sacramento, and the thunderstorms are a little bit more run-of-the-mill up there, but again, they may fill in and intensify somewhat as the afternoon goes on. Some of this heavy rain finally starting to move out of the North Bay, except for Napa County, where things are still escalating a little bit. So the real focus is San Francisco and the heart of the Bay Area right now. But this line will continue to progress eastward, and maybe some problems down the Big Sur coast. Probably not so much with wind this time around, but more with just heavy rainfall, mudslide, debris flow type situations, as well as a slight chance of a coastal waterspout once again. Just looking to see if there's any recent updates on this. This probably won't be a super long session today, unlike yesterday's, because I really do need to do other work, but I did want to pop in since this was affecting quite a lot of folks quite substantially in San Francisco and the heart of the Bay Area. You know, what's interesting is that folks are saying, oh, this came out of nowhere, this wasn't in the forecast. Well, this is one real big downside of using your smartphone weather app. This is exactly the kind of weather that was predicted by the National Weather Service and the Storms Prediction Center. You know, the challenge is knowing exactly how much rain is going to fall in a convective pattern like this versus somewhere else is difficult. So pinpointing exactly that San Francisco was going to get a huge downpour between 1 and 3 p.m. Really wasn't possible far in advance. But we knew that there was a high likelihood today of widespread heavy showers with embedded thunderstorms, which is exactly what we've seen. Now, this is a particularly robust and slow-moving band of heavy showers and thunderstorms, but it is occurring right where we thought it probably would, right when we thought it probably would. And the challenge is your smartphone weather app probably said something like scattered showers or a 50% chance of showers or something. And that doesn't really capture this pattern, of course, even though technically that is what we're seeing. It's just that the showers right now are all concentrated in one place, and they're pretty heavy. So these aren't brief sprinkles. These are torrential downpours and thunderstorms. And so what is a rain shower? Well, it can be quite light or it can be violently intense. It really depends on the context. And meteorologically, it totally makes sense that today we're seeing these quite intense showers and even thunderstorms around. But again, pinpointing that San Francisco specifically would be hit so hard, not something we would really be able to do that far in advance. So, you know, this was the pattern we were expecting. Sometimes, you know, this particular swath of I mean, this is a pretty impressive little swath. this isn't really associated with a real powerful cold front or anything. It's kind of just this mesoscale convective feature because the atmosphere is so unstable right now. It's there might be some sort of boundary in here, but it's not really something that's super distinct. I actually, as I mentioned, just based on looking at the radar swirl, I kind of think that there's a little. We keep hearing the term mesolow, and this keeps happening, sort of this season, where there's some sort of small scale feature in the atmosphere that induces just a little bit of spin and cyclonic spin in the atmosphere, an unstable atmosphere, and interesting things can happen. So I don't. Is this a cold front? I don't think so. I think that this is really just a sort of a weak boundary. But what there is, if you zoom in on this, and I'll zoom in again and bring up the rotational view just to show this a little bit, make it a little bit more apparent. You can kind of see this. So in this circle, at least in the first few frames, there's green on the left and red on the right, which does show you that that in general there is sort of broad rotation along that axis. And that's sort of why the rain is more stratiform, so less convective up here. It's just sort of moderate, steady rain, but not quite so intense. But it's much more sort of intense at higher hourly rates, sort of in this sector right now, maybe extending a little bit farther north, earlier up into San Francisco. And that's because this is sort of where the best upward vertical motion is. This is where there's probably some surface convergence in the atmosphere. And up here, we transition more to stratiform. So I think we sort of have here a division somewhere, where it's sort of stratiform clouds, rain like this, and then down here we have the nice cumulonimbus type clouds with the showers and the thunderstorms. You can see my very poor drawing skills on the screen here. Anyway, I'll glance and see what else there is. As I mentioned, there is a chance of some stronger thunderstorms in the Central Valley later today. There's already some popping up on the San Joaquin, and there may be a few more in the Sacramento later. The hodographs are not as strongly curved, so there isn't as much shear. There isn't as much rotation in the atmosphere capable of producing potential tornadoes, but the real risk with this would usually be lightning. Lightning is probably the most dangerous thing with most California thunderstorms, by the way. Certainly lightning, and then probably flooding. So these torrential downpours locally that can fall on already saturated soils and cause some additional problems. So, severe weather risk is low, but not zero. But the bigger risk is just lightning and heavy downpours and subsequent flooding, as we're seeing again in San Francisco. And if I zoom in, you can kind of see right now downtown getting a bit of a break relative to previously. But then look at what's coming in again. This axis of heavier rainfall. It's narrow. It's between Ocean Beach and downtown, and it's moving eastward and moving across the center of the city right now. So down in Daly City, South San Francisco, you can see the rain is a lot heavier right now. So there's probably some ongoing flooding there too. Probably going to be, I guess it's a little bit early for the commute, although these days, who knows. Probably going to be a mess on the East Bay freeways, 280, the bridges, all the bridges, probably kind of a mess today. And then I-80 later on, as this moves up, will be probably a mess in the valley with all the heavy rain. Southern California, if it sprinkles, you got problems on the roads. We know the drill there. Let's see what folks are saying about it. Yeah, some images of, significant urban flooding. Nothing super catastrophic, but, again, this is like, as I mentioned, the fourth or fifth time that San Francisco has flooded like this in the past 2 years, and it's, the second or third time since December this year. So it's notable that this just keeps happening in different parts of California, and that San Francisco has been the epicenter multiple times in recent months. One thing I will do is I'm going to swap over to satellite. I just want to show the slightly wider view here. And what you'll see here is simply, it's a slightly zoomed out view relative to the radar, but you're seeing the same thing. Look, it's mostly clear out over the ocean, blue skies, but there's this intense band of showers and thunderstorms from the central coast up into the Bay Area, with these isolated storms developing out in the Central Valley. And then if we zoom out even further, what we see is this plume, this atmospheric river plume. It's weak-ish, weak to moderate in Southern California, but it continues to bring more water to Southern California with some additional flood risk. And honestly, the flood risk down there may be higher when these narrow bands of thunderstorms, showers and thunderstorms, move in overnight into tomorrow with those heavier hourly downpours. Once this big wave moves through the Bay Area, there's maybe one more behind it right here, and then I think that's pretty much going to be it. So tomorrow will be much drier in the Bay Area, still be fairly wet in Southern California. After that, we get another nice dry period, things dry out. Another week, maybe a weak storm over the weekend, but nothing too impressive. So no more extremely active weather after today's and tomorrow's event for about another week, and then we might see another transition to yet another more active storm pattern. Could be colder. I'm not going to talk about it too much now. We will see. One good thing is that the Sierra snowpack over the past couple of weeks has risen to near average in some places, although it's still below average in others. I think that the upcoming pattern toward the end of February might be slightly more favorable for snow accumulation, so we might end up March 1st in pretty good shape from a Sierra snowpack perspective. Of course, the Central Coast and Southern California are going to be well above average precipitation for the entire season after this storm wraps up, so a wet season is all but guaranteed for Central and Southern California, and for parts of Northern California closer to the coast as well. And the mountains, the Northern Sierra, slightly different story, but we'll see what happens in the next few weeks, because there still is plenty of time for another 1 to 3 major storm cycles, and that would pretty much put even that part of the state above average for the season. So we will see what happens. Warmer than average temperatures are still likely to be the name of the game this spring and summer, perhaps by a wide degree relative to the historical average, so that'll play into this. This year may be a little bit more interesting, by the way, from a wildfire risk perspective, because it's been very wet, but it has not been very cold, and depending on how quickly the snow melts and depending on how hot of a summer we get this year, late summer and autumn could end up being much more active wildfire-wise, potentially, than was last year. We could be saved by the bell again with another rare but substantial tropical storm-related rain event that sort of short-circuits fire season. But if that doesn't happen, I would expect this year to be significantly more active than last year, despite both years being relatively wet. And that's partly because this year has not been cold, and the spring and summer to come are likely to be a lot warmer than last spring and summer. And also because now there's been so much additional growth of brush and grass in a lot of places, including in some of the fire zones in the 2010s that have filled in over the past couple of wet winters, that if we do get an unusually warm summer or an unusually dry and warm autumn, or some combination of those things, then the conditions will be much more favorable for widespread fire activity than they were last year or the year before. That's getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I've gotten several questions about that today, so I just thought I'd raise it right now. So I'll bring the radar back up one more time, since I just wanted to show that satellite briefly, just because I think it's important to see the bigger picture, literally in that case. And as I mentioned, so it's actually a little bit more obvious now. You can kind of see that there is this swirl somewhere, this meso-low somewhere, sort of with a little bit of, it's subtle, but it's there. And this whole thing is kind of moving up this way. So I would expect that mainly this sector of the low pressure system has got the biggest chance for some heavier thunderstorms to pop up as this whole feature lifts northward. And then as that lifts northward into the evening, we might see a few more of them a bit farther to the north and east again, sort of in this sector. And then, not to be left out, down at Big Sur, this line of heavy convective showers, isolated thunderstorms, going to move inland shortly. But behind it, there is this, you can see yet another little mesoscale or sub-mesoscale, little low out there. This too will spin through the Bay Area, bring yet some more scattered showers, isolated thunderstorms tonight. But after that, that's it. That'll be the end of things. Just going to do one more pass, see what folks are saying, take a look at the questions quickly. Looks like the rest of the Bay Area is under a flood advisory. Lesser flood statement from the Weather Service than a flash flood warning. But San Francisco's, of course, is more urgent and more significant flood-related product. It's been a busy couple of days for the Weather Service in Monterey. All right, so I'm going to quickly go through the questions. Well, it seems that the squirrel wire problem has been addressed. It is remarkable that there was apparently multiple, essentially, telecommunications line in the neighborhood that were completely eaten through all the way to the copper wire. So what was happening was that every time there'd be any moisture on the wires, is that there would essentially be signal interference, because sometimes that would cause I guess there's a really small amount of current that runs through these wires, and it would cause some conductivity with adjacent things because there were some tree branches that were leaning on them, and apparently they had to call out the actual power utility folks to do some tree trimming and to access higher parts of the power poles, because of course the telecommunications lines are generally mounted below the electrical wires so that they're accessible without getting closer to the dangerous electrical conduits above. But in this case they needed to access both. So what I am told though is the official report will say 2 instances of severe squirrel related damage is the reason why we've been having such terrible connectivity problems with Comcast since last summer. So why it took this long to find that is another question, but I am glad that they have had, there's probably 24 people out in the neighborhood doing the work today. So once again, a lot of person hours have gone into it. Anyway, just kind of a funny aside for those of you who've been following that. Brian mentions it's warm and sunny in San Mateo, which is kind of remarkable, given, honestly, maybe things have just cleared, but it sure looks like it was raining heavily there until very recently. Robin mentions dumping in El Cerrito. No surprise there based on the radar. Lots of folks saying a wild night of thunder and lightning in different places. There was quite a lot last year. Boulder Creek, half an inch of rain per hour in Boulder Creek. That's a heavy rate, and if you sustain it for more than an hour, you're going to cause some flooding. Pouring in San Jose near Los Gatos. No surprise there. Flood warnings up by Boy Springs and Sonoma. Just to be clear, no flash flood warning, which is a higher grade warning, but there are flood advisories from the Weather Service, and there's been ongoing flooding in a lot of the usual spots in Sonoma County for the last couple of days, really. Oh, just realized that I wasn't sharing. I didn't switch over. Oh, maybe I did switch over to the radar. Sorry, there's a little bit of a lag. I'm just trying to see where I am. Okay, good. I did switch it over. My apologies. Yeah, I mean, there's this notion that so say when I hear scattered showers, I guess I don't think of intense or heavy rainfall. Well, showers, all that shower versus rain refers to is the duration of precipitation. It tells you nothing about the intensity. You can have torrential showers. In fact, most of the precipitation that you get, on the Gulf Coast or in a tropical thunderstorm-prone region, say in the afternoon, those would be showers. They're relatively brief. They last, 10 minutes to 30 minutes or an hour, but they can be absolutely torrential tropical rain. In fact, most of the rain in the tropics is, in fact, showers, brief but very intense downpours. That's the most common mode of, rain in the Amazon rainforest, intertropical convergence zone, brief but very intense rainfall. That's the nature of convective rainfall that comes from towering cumulus and cumulonimbus clouds in an unstable environment. So showers, this is a weakness of communication of weather predictions. Showers can either be very consequential and cause flooding and disruption, or they can literally just be drizzle. And the intensity is what defines that, and also how many of them you get. One downpour versus an afternoon of repeated downpours. We don't often hear that, and scattered showers doesn't differentiate. So it wouldn't be at all unreasonable to say scattered heavy showers or scattered showers heavy at times. I don't know why we don't do that more often, but it's convective versus non-convective precipitation is the big one. A comment that downtown Pasadena is already at 18 inches for the water year already, and we only get a little over 20 inches in a typical year. I mean, you might get pretty close to 20 inches by the end of this current storm event by Wednesday, so maybe not quite in Pasadena, but you'll get closer. You'll get maybe to 19 and a half, something like that. Robin asks about March rain in Southern California. The odds are that the active pattern will mostly continue in Southern California, but honestly, there's already probably enough moisture down there for a significant bloom. Although moisture isn't the only limiting factor. I'm not an ecologist, and so potential for the Carrizo Plain and Southeast Desert wildflower blooms, the moisture will be there. The question is whether the seeds are primed. If there's been recent blooms, I don't know if there's some minimum recurrence interval where you kind of have to recover from the recent bloom for another big one. I don't know. It's a question maybe more for ecologists, some of whom may be in the comment section. So, could a mountain like Mount Diablo or San Bruno Mountain in the Bay Area with a modest elevation. By the way, San Bruno Mountain I think is like 1,500 feet at the top, but Diablo is taller. I think it's like 3,000 or so, maybe 3,500 at the top. I don't know exactly, but it's probably about twice as high as San Bruno Mountain. Can they get boosted rain rates and winds because of lift? Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's actually the sweet spot. It's the first few thousand feet of the atmosphere that are most susceptible to orographic wind and rain enhancement, and so they're right in that zone. More so Diablo than San Bruno, but probably even to an extent. There is like a wetter, windier microclimate on and near San Bruno Mountain, South San Francisco. Prospects for drought in 2024 in California ain't going to happen. Just based on what happened last year, how wet and cool it was, and this year, how wet it is, although notably not cool, we're not really going to have meaningful drought conditions in California this year. Could they develop quickly in 2025, winter 2024-25? Sure, that's within the realm of possibility. Could we get a bad wildfire season because it gets extremely warm and dry starting this summer following a really wet winter? That would be kind of like the 2017 analog, and there were terrible fires in autumn 2017, so that is possible. But in terms of significant drought, I think just based on what's already occurred, probably not going to happen. It would be really difficult to get there this calendar year. Next water year, that's always a different story. Sounds like the lightning is picking up on the east side of the band near Fairfield. So it's expanding a bit. Yeah, Mount Diablo, it's the reminder, it's 3,800 feet. So yeah, it's a decent mountain. I mean, it's got, that's high enough to consistently get some snow in winter. Snow levels pretty much every year drop below to at least 3,000 feet in the Bay Area. So there's usually top 1,000 feet or so of Mount Diablo gets snow essentially every season, usually more than once. It's interesting. I'm looking back at the radar near Fairfield, and at least here I'm not seeing lightning strikes that were getting reported. But again, this doesn't capture 100% of them, and more importantly, it doesn't capture in-cloud lightning. It only captures cloud to ground. So there is usually more in-cloud lightning than cloud to ground. So that may be what you're hearing. It's still lightning. It just is a different form. It doesn't make a connection with the ground. And then San Francisco, again, it's pouring again. I mean, since we've been on this conversation, rain rates in downtown have probably you should be seeing it pick back up again. But this is the back end of it is finally coming through. As you can see, this is kind of the back end of the heavy rain. It's finally making some eastward progress. So, but this means that Berkeley, Hayward, Concord, all of the East Bay next in line for this big blob. I don't think this blob is going to be able to completely fall apart before it makes it over here. So heavier rain up there. And then again, some heavier showers in the North Bay moving in on the backside, but those don't look as intense as earlier. And I don't see any lightning right now. Where there is lightning currently, down, if we look again, San Joaquin Valley, stronger storms trying to pop up down here. And then up again by Sacramento, and north of Sacramento actually, up between Sacramento and Oroville, with more of these cells up here. So I do think that there could be some new storms that pop up here in the next couple hours. But today, I do not have the time to stay on all day. So if anything, I'll never say never, I guess, because that's always a mistake. But right now, again, this blobby swirl of some convective precipitation with some more discrete cells popping up to the east of it, all of this is going to continue to lift northward, bring some downpours and some thunderstorms, locally some strong ones, for the rest of the afternoon. All right, folks, I'm going to do one more glance at things, and then I think I'm going to call it a session. All right, I think that just about covers it for today's pop-up. Thanks for joining me. Again, one of the advantages to being subscribed to the channel is that you get notified when this happens. I only decided I was going to do this about 10 minutes before I started, so there's only so much time to give people notice. But that's a good way to keep appraised of what's going on. And with that, I got to go back to writing. So see you later. Hopefully the squirrel damage is in the rear of your mirror, and the internet connectivity should be more stable moving forward. I've said that before, but this time sounds like there was a visibly substantial damage from squirrels that has now been repaired. So anyway, I find it endlessly amusing, the things that can go wrong. See you all later.